There's a kind of crop you only need to plant once. No annual seed, no chemical contracts, just food for years. But as modern agriculture chased profit, these crops vanished from catalogs and fields. They weren't outlawed. They were labeled unprofitable and quietly erased. If food could free you from the system, who decided it shouldn't survive? The answer begins with the invention of farming for repetition. Machines changed farming forever. By 1950, more than 70% of American farms ran on engines, no animals. Tractors plowed fields faster than any horse. Combines swept across acres, gathering crops in hours instead of days. Every pass of the blade, every churn of the soil depended on crops that could be uprooted, replanted, and harvested on a strict schedule. The system rewarded repetition. Each season brought a new purchase, fresh seed, more fertilizer, another round of chemicals. The more a crop fit this cycle, the more valuable it became, not for its nutrition or resilience, but for how well it could be sold again and again. Perennial crops, the kind that returned on their own, clashed with this new logic. Machines needed uniform fields, predictable growth, and plants that died on cue. Anything that survived the harvest, anything that broke the loop, was a problem to be solved. The economic engine of modern agriculture ran on the promise of return customers. It wasn't enough to feed people. The real business was in making sure farmers came back to buy every single year. As machines spread from coast to coast, the rules of farming rewrote themselves. The land became a factory floor, and crops became products with built-in obsolescence. In this world, permanence wasn't just overlooked, it was designed out of existence. Perennial crops are living permanents. Plant them once, and their roots claim the soil for years, sometimes decades, without asking for more. Each spring, new shoots push through last season's mulch, ready to feed a household without another. Trip to the store or another check written to the seed company. Jerusalem artichoke is one of these. A single patch, started with a handful of tubers, will multiply quietly underground. Even after the hardest winter, or a summer when the rain never comes, it returns. Some homesteaders remember their grandparents relying on these stubborn plants when money was tight and the annual crops failed. One elder in rural Ohio still digs Jerusalem artichokes from the same corner of land her father planted in the 1940s. She hasn't bought seed for it in her lifetime. The patch survives drought, frost, and years of neglect, offering food when little else will grow. Unlike annuals, there is no need to plow, no need to replant, no need to pour on fertilizer or chemicals. The work is done up front, and the reward keeps coming. Good King Henry, rhubarb, and sea kale all share this trait. Their roots run deep, holding soil in place, drawing up nutrients from below. For families who depended on these crops, permanence wasn't just a promise, it was freedom. They could feed themselves without permission, without debt, without waiting for someone to sell them a solution. That kind of independence is rare in agriculture today, but for those who remember, it is as real as the first green shoots breaking through the thawed earth each spring. In the archives of the National Agricultural Library, a pattern begins to surface. Seed catalogs from the early 20th century read like invitations to independence, perennial vegetables on every page, promises of harvests that last for years. Burpee's 1935 catalog features Jerusalem artichokes and Good King Henry, plants you buy once, plants that feed families for generations. By the 1950s, these listings begin to thin. Ferry Morse, once a reliable source for perennial roots and crowns, shifts its focus to annual hybrids and chemical treatments. The 1941 edition still offers rhubarb and horseradish. 2 decades later, those sections shrink, tucked behind glossy spreads for hybrid corn and disease-resistant beans. Gurney's, another major name, follows the same arc. Catalogs from 1928 show rhubarb and perennial onions alongside strawberries and asparagus. By 1960, perennial vegetables are listed as specialty items if they appear at all. Extension bulletins from land-grant universities echo this trend. Where once they taught about deep-rooted crops and multi-year harvests, new publications stress high-yield annuals, mechanized planting, and fertilizer schedules. The change is not abrupt, but it is unmistakable. Year after year, perennial crops fade from the public record, not by decree, but by omission. The evidence sits in black and white. A perennial's name listed in 1947, missing in 1959, gone entirely by 1972. No announcement, no explanation, just a quiet erasure. The catalogs themselves become artifacts of forgetting, each missing page a clue to what was lost, and to who decided it was no longer worth remembering. Patent law rewrote the rules of farming. In 1970, Congress passed the Plant Variety Protection Act, giving breeders exclusive rights to new seed varieties for 20 years. But there was a catch. Farmers could still save seed for their own use, a loophole that kept some control in growers' hands. That changed after a series of court decisions. In 1980, the Supreme Court ruled in Diamond versus Chakrabarty that living organisms, if engineered, could be patented. By 2001, the JEM Ag Supply versus Pioneer hybrid decision confirmed that utility patents covered most seeds, not just genetically modified ones. These patents came with no farmer exemption. Saving seed was now a violation, enforceable by lawsuit. The logic was simple. Annual crops could be locked into a buy-every-year system, with contracts and technology use agreements, making sure nothing slipped through. Perennials, which kept coming back on their own, offered no such leverage. They could not be patented in the same way, could not guarantee repeat business, and did not fit a model built on endless transactions. As intellectual property rights tightened, seed catalogs and research budgets followed the money. Crops you could only sell once became a liability. The law did not just protect invention, it protected the cycle of dependency, making sure the most profitable crops were always the ones you had to buy again. Extension offices once mailed out bulletins on perennials. They explained how to plant, when to harvest, and which varieties could feed a family through lean years. In the 1970s, those guides thinned, then vanished. Land-grant universities updated their curricula, dropping lessons on rhubarb crowns and Jerusalem artichoke patches. New syllabi stressed high-yield annuals, efficient rotations, and chemical schedules. Perennials, labeled inefficient, no longer fit the official model. Funding followed suit. Budgets once set aside for perennial trials or community gardens shifted toward research on hybrid corn and soybeans. By 1975, annual crop studies dominated grant charts. Extension agents trained in the new system stopped teaching perennial care to the next wave of farmers. Seed companies, seeing no market, stopped offering roots and crowns. Without fresh supplies, even the most stubborn home patches dwindled. Within a single generation, the knowledge that once passed from neighbor to neighbor faded from memory. No ban, no scandal. Just a quiet, procedural forgetting, written into the routines of agriculture itself. In Kansas, a team of plant breeders at the Land Institute is digging for answers in the roots. Their fields hold kernza, a perennial grain with roots stretching 3 meters deep, twice as far as most annual wheat. Each year, kernza returns without replanting, holding soil through droughts and storms. Seed banks around the world are opening their vaults, releasing forgotten varieties, skirret, Turkish rocket, and perennial sorrel, once dismissed as relics, now tested in backyard plots and university trials. These crops do not promise record-breaking yields or quick profits. What they offer is something harder to measure, a kind of quiet resilience, a way to grow food without starting over every season. For some, that is hope. For others, it is a challenge. If a crop can feed people for decades without driving sales or debt, who gets to decide what counts as progress? The roots are still there, waiting. The question is whether we are ready to let them grow. Today, as food prices surge and supply chains strain, crops that once offered lasting independence remain in the margins, by design, not by accident. The systems that erased them still shape what fills our plates. The question now, who decides what food freedom really means? Share your thoughts below.